Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida podcast. In this show, we talk to leaders in the community, leaders of clubs, and interesting folks who live here in the Villages, to give perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes.
A note from the heart. Hello, dear listeners. I'm thrilled to share our passion project with you. Podcast that brings joy, knowledge, and inspiration. Creating it is a labor of love, even though it demands more time than I can easily spare. But hey, time isn't something that we can buy back, right? Now, here's where you come in, the unsung hero. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. You can make a small monthly contribution. Visit our website, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter box. Even a humble $3 to $10 a month makes a difference. And guess what? You can cancel anytime, no strings attached, free and priceless. Thank you. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on.
If you have a book that you would like to turn into an audiobook, let us know via email to mike@rothvoice.com. Hope you enjoy today's show.
This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. I'm here today with Joe Mongan. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for searching me out in the Villages and inviting me to come on a podcast. I think these podcasts are always a good thing to do for people to listen to.
Right. I think there aren't enough podcasts like this in the Villages. Yeah. Joe runs a club dedicated to beer or craft beer.
Yeah, craft beer. There's a difference between beer and craft beer. And a lot of people probably in our age groups are just used to drinking beer. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to get out the word about craft beer, which is a totally different kind of style of beer.
So how long have you run the craft beer club?
The craft beer club started in May of 21. So coming up here in less than a few weeks, well, by the time this show goes live, the club will be 3 years old. So
Good. And how many members do you have in the craft beer club?
We currently have 400 members, and we have 35 or so on the wait list currently. So we're trying to see if we can increase membership, but we have to go to the members and see if they're willing to do that, or we're going to keep it at a cap on our membership right now.
Interesting. There are only a few clubs here in the Villages that are capped. Second Honeymooners and the New Jersey Club are the only two I can think of.
Yeah, it all depends what you consider where you want to keep a good membership and the quality of what you can provide your members. You got to give them something that keeps them coming back. I mean, you can say you have 1,000 members, but how many people are actually active? And our club strives to have most everybody active. And if you can't get into an event, but you strive every morning or every time when the event goes live and you can never get into the event, then you're not getting much for your membership. So we try to keep it to a level that everybody has an opportunity.
Well, I'm glad to hear people want to show up. Joe, first, why don't you tell our listeners what the difference is between beer and craft beer?
Well, beer is probably what most people consider, it's mass-produced. It's mass-produced on gallon by gallon. So I'm not going to throw out a few names there because it's the Budweisers, I guess you can say, and the Miller Lights and the
Coors
and the Coors and all the big boys that do millions and gallons and advertise like crazy. Craft beer is more generating toward the smaller breweries, and I don't offhand currently know what the levels are, but it's more quality ingredients, lesser of a product. But most people consider it like they're more informal kind of beers. They're not, I guess that's probably not the right word to use, is informal.
A small batch.
It's small batch beers. But the people that do small batches can afford to put some more expensive adjuncts and stuff in their beers to make different beers that you can't get readily available in the big market because it becomes too expensive.
Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff would that be?
Well, like a lot of fruits, actual real fruit, instead of using extracts in beers, because a lot of the cheap way to go, and if you do a lot of things with a beer, you can put extracts in there, but that gives you like an alcohol kind of indifferent bite to the beer. So where craft beers, most generally, they will use the actual real fruit product, which makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. But it's more expensive. Right. But that's what, money's not everything all the time when you're trying to do a beer that most people can't get a hold of.
Mm-hmm. And what percentage of alcohol is in the craft beer?
Well, craft beer, and that's what, the craft beers can be any level of alcohol because there's session beers. There's session beers. What session means is they're a light alcohol beer. They're 3 to 5%, roughly. And what it means is you can drink these all day because they're lesser alcohol. So when you get into the craft beer styles, then you start getting into the doubles and the triples and everything else. But you can go from a session beer all the way to a Russian Imperial Stout. And sometimes you can get those in the 18 range of 18%. ABV, 18%. They're barrel-aged beers, which has got a little picked up from the barrels and all that stuff. So you can get a broad range in craft beers where some of the, cheaper beers on the market, they have 4%, and that's where they stay. They don't alter those kind of quantities. So.
Joe, how long have you been brewing beer?
I've been brewing beer a little over 12 years. So it started all out as there's two different reasons I started it. I started it out because in Illinois, where I was, in the Chicago area, about 90 miles west of Chicago, I found the beers were bypassing, and I would come from Rockford, Illinois. The good craft beers were bypassing Rockford and going up into like Wisconsin or to some other cities because our distributors were not bringing them in currently. And I thought, well, what's the reason for that? I could see some of my favorite beers, and what I really originally started brewing beer it was Three Floyds out of Indiana was producing a craft beer that I've never, you've never had it before. And all of a sudden somebody went and brought some back and gave you a taste of that. And it's like, well, why can't I get that here?
Yeah, I've had that with a beer from Montauk Point, Long Island. You can't get Montauk beer outside of New York.
Yeah, that's the way. And so there's other beers, and they do that for a reason. So I thought, well, why can't I just start investigating how can I make this at home? So I had my two son-in-laws. I said, let's brew beer together for something to do. And we brewed a couple batches and so on. And I went to, they didn't have any problem drinking my beer, or our beer at the time. But then I started getting involved more in the brewing process, which had created a habit for more money to put into the project. And they had families they were just starting out in and everything else. So they said, oh, we're bailing out now. We can't get into it. You're spending too much money. So I said, well, okay, well, that's fine. But they never had a problem coming home over to the house and drinking what I was making, and they still don't. They still visit here and everything else, and they still love to drink what I do. So,
Did you have any craft beers with strange names?
Oh, yeah. I got a few strange names. Like we just had what we called our homebrew rock party a couple of weeks ago, and I have a coconut milk stout that I call Monkey Trap. So you wonder, how does that come about? And well, the milk stout actually has coconut in it.
So the beer is white?
No, it's actually dark, basically motor oil. And I looked online and was looking for names of beers, and I Googled a lot of things, and I thought, well, if it's got coconut in it, then I found a picture of something where they trap monkeys by putting a coconut on a chain, tying it down, and then they put rice in the coconut, and then the monkey reaches in there and grabs a hold of the rice, but it can't open its hand back up because it never wants to let go of the rice. So that's just much like my beer. You never want to let it go either as you're drinking it. So that's how I come up with the name of that.
What's your favorite style of beer?
IPAs are probably my most favorable styles.
For people who aren't familiar with IPA, tell us what that means.
An IPA is an India Pale Ale, and the folklore goes that they used to add a lot of hops to beers in India. As they crossed the desert, the beers would become less flavorful, and maybe because they got too warm or something, it was to add more hops to beers. So, it took the American style people to probably start increasing the style, but the name kept up the same profile or style, you want to say. And there's so many different styles of IPAs out there. That's what I say to some people. They say, well, I don't like IPAs. I said, you just have not had the right one yet. There's a style of an IPA out there for you. That's why you have to read the cans, pay attention to it. And much like that, you have to join a club that teaches you about craft beer. And that's why we started what we do.
Good. I understand that you are working or have worked with a brewery in Tampa to create a new beer.
Yeah, so what I started out with Tampa, how I met her is that we, as a club, we start doing brewery trips to different breweries in the area because, as everyone knows, the Villages does not have a brewery in the Villages within the limits.
Really?
No, I mean, which they should, and I think it's going to change because I hear some rumors that there might be some coming, either they've started by the Villages or somebody, I believe, is going to start one out of an adventure through my club or some other people. Who knows who's coming in here, but this is a prime market for it. Mm-hmm. So I met Devin Krebs of Seventh Son Brewery on one of my bus trips. Mm-hmm. And we take 56 people and we're gone 10 hours a day. That seems like a lot, but when you hour and a half drive and bus
each way,
and then you got to go to all these different breweries, and it's just a fun day. I mean,
so you go to Tampa and visit how many breweries?
We do 4 or 5.
4 or 5 in a day.
And sometimes we can go to a place where you can get like 3 within walking distance. So that's up to you which ones you want to go to. Mm-hmm. So we were just sitting out back talking about a style of beer that I was starting to come up with, and it's never been produced before.
Never been produced?
No, because I came up with the style myself because there was what they call a Brut IPA, mm-hmm. which is a style much like Brut champagne.
Mm-hmm. They're very dry.
They're very dry, highly carbonated, and they just lack body. So I thought, speaking of my milk stouts have lactose sugar in them. Mm-hmm. That does not ferment out. So it leaves the beer sweeter. So when you see milk stouts, they're different than a stout because of the sugar that's left in the beer because it does not ferment. So I thought, well, if I like the Brut mm-hmm. and I like the milk stout, I added lactose to a Brut. And now it's called a Hyperbalique IPA. That's the name that Devin come up with it because that's her job is to think of different names of things as styles. And it was like, what style do we call it? What do we do that?
So is it available for sale in Publix here in the Villages? Not
currently. I mean, we brewed 450 gallons of it about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And it all sold. It was on tap at Edna's. It was on tap at Sunny Point. And, it's pretty cool to see your own beer on a tap list where mm-hmm. you live. And that's probably been one of my goals as a brewer is, can I get my beer ever mass produced? So I think it's something that we're going to pursue again.
And let's take a quick break here and listen to a Alzheimer's tip from Dr. Craig Curtis.
Yeah.
Dr. Curtis, can you talk about alcohol use and Alzheimer's?
Yes, Mike. They have had studies out for years that show those that have 1 to 2 drinks a day actually have a lower risk of heart attack or stroke. And in a study published...
That's interesting. That means that people who totally abstain from alcohol have a higher risk?
That's a difficult question, Mike. It's, yes, those that abstain from alcohol, not with Alzheimer's disease, but actually had a slightly higher risk of heart attack and stroke. Mm-hmm. However, so this was a study published in June of 2023 in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. And they showed for the first time that those that had 1 to 2 drinks per day, it was associated with lower risk of heart attack or stroke. And they found out it was because of long-term reductions in stress signaling in the brain. So essentially, they had less stress, which we've always known is a risk factor for a heart attack or stroke. But the American College of Cardiology currently is not advocating for the use of alcohol to reduce your risk of heart attack or strokes because of other concerning effects of alcohol on health.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
So she opened her Dunedin branch was the branch that she first started with. And that's where I met her and started talking about that style of beer. She asked me after I brewed it, she goes, please bring that down because I'm interested in trying that. I've never heard of that combination. Mm-hmm. So I took it down to her, and she sampled it, and as we're sitting around the brewery and customers were there, I started taking a few samples around. They said, well, no, we don't like IPAs. And I said, well, this is a little bit different style of an IPA. It's got more body. It's got more hops, but the hops are pop a little bit more. By pop means I think you have more aroma and you have more flavor out of them because of the lactose being used. And it was very true that that was the case. And after the beer actually came out, we were at the brewery to go pick up some more of my beer. And I was sitting around at the tables and I was looking around at everybody drinking the beer. And I told my wife, I said, half the people in here are drinking my beer. And she says, I don't believe you. And I said, go up and ask them. Because I can tell by the way the lacing on the glass, and what the lacing means is there's really, as you drink it, it's much like wine, where you see the rings of every time you stop, sip rings.
Right.
The beer will do the same thing. It'll leave the foam ring as each time you take a sip. And I can see by the foam ring and I can see by the color. I said, half these people are drinking my beer. And she went up and asked, and sure thing, they did. They were. So.
Yeah. There was a beer salesman in Cincinnati. I think his name was Herdman. He decided he left the beer company that he was working for and opened up his own brewery. He bought up the beer formulas for all of the old beers from Cincinnati and was brewing fresh from the old formulas. Opened up a couple of restaurants and a brewery of his own. And then he ran out of capacity, and he's having other people brew the old beers with the old labels on them for him.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing about beers. I mean, there's beer styles that have been out, but there's also, I mean, they've been out for years, but there's also a lot of beers, and the styles are starting to come back now because people are saying, what can I brew next that's different? Because everybody's brewing an IPA, everybody's brewing a stout, everybody's doing this. What can I do to be different?
I've never heard of a monkey beer before.
I think you probably won't.
I can't find that in the store.
No, you're not yet. You never know. I do have another one that I'm thinking about trying to release in the villages, and I'm not sure I should say that on this program. But are you open to villages folklore?
Sure.
So I'm thinking, I've asked Devin, the same lady, as is thinking is that I'm going to brew a pineapple and wheat beer and mass produce it and release it in the villages. And
what are you calling it?
Pineapples and loofahs. You've heard the folklore of the villages with the loofahs and the pineapple, right?
I've heard about the loofahs, not too much about the pineapple.
The pineapples were the long ago thing that you would Google a lot, and there was a pineapple or whatever you're doing with the pineapple. It's just like everything
pineapple,
else.
Yeah, that was from the 1930s.
Yeah, so there's that story. So it was like a combination thing. So that could be possibly the next beer that hits the market. Well, we don't know yet, but
that could be a big hit in the villages.
Yes, exactly.
And with 150,000 people here, you don't need too big of a hit to sell out. So, Joe, are you still working or are you retired?
I'm working. I think I have a couple years left. I work for a dredging company in Leesburg, which is only about a 10-minute drive. I'm very happy with what I do. And then it keeps me busy. But then when everybody says, how do you do that and run a club and do some of these other things and brew beer? It's just I have a wife that allows me to do some of these things. Sometimes she thinks I'm crazy for doing certain things and get involved in things, but I like to be involved in things. I just it passes my time.
What'd you do? Take the whole garage, air condition it, and turn it into a mini brewery?
No, I wish I would air condition it, but I have not done that yet. Actually, because when you brew it, you're boiling for an hour, you're doing that. So it's like, it'd be like a waste of time to
you have to have some fans.
You got to have fans, yes. And then the Florida weather is always, it makes brewing beer interesting. The groundwater temperature affects things for cooling the beer down. In Illinois, I could brew in the wintertime and my groundwater temperature would be in the 50s. It'd cool my beer down in a little bit of no time. But here, it's a little different ballgame.
So here, do you use like reverse osmosis filtration water or you just use tap water?
I use tap water, but I run it through the Nova system that a lot of the villagers have in their houses. And then I sent the water sample out after it came out to Ward Labs, and then I know what to add back into it. Because if you take and use RO water, you're stripping all the good stuff out of the water, then you got to build it all back up. So if you know something you're starting with that's, in the ballpark of what your brewing water is, brewing water and messing with the water with different additives for your water, like salts and gypsum and all that stuff, becomes a big game. And it's it's just like anything else. How good you want to get is how much you want to keep tweaking. Do you want to just brew it and get it done and drink it real fast? That's a different ballgame too. But if you want to make quality beer, go through all the proper procedures and buy the equipment and all that. It's up to you what you want to do. Brewing beer is like cooking. You can buy the cheapest oven or you can buy the best oven. It's up to you.
Right. So in your club, how many of the members actually brew their own beer?
That actually brew their own beer, we've had a big major revamp of our website. And what we have found out, there's 115 people that are interested, are active brewers. So we're going to break that down and try to increase the number. I would say we probably have 30 active brewers in the villages and probably another 50 or so that have brewed before, total. So by the time you get done, we're going to start really pushing that branch of the club as far as getting in the brewing process, trying to get involved in some festivals in the area, try to get involved in festivals within the villages.
Sure, I could see something at that, like the barbecue festival.
Yeah, and it could be a thing that I would like to try to do is do our own festival, tie it with some of the other bigger clubs, and turn it into a yearly event and raise money for a charity.
Yeah, that's great. I used to run for 3 years I ran the all-German car show, and we wanted to do it outside of the villages, so we held it at the Harbor Hills Country Club, which was okay, but we were on an asphalt parking lot, and we were kind of limited to 100 vehicles because of the size of the parking lot, and the fact that he wanted to keep his golf course open. He wouldn't let me park cars on the golf course.
I don't know why. But...
Yeah, that's how you do a concourse.
Yeah, exactly.
But now the Baker House is open to car shows. That would be an interesting proposition.
I think what I would visualize if we do this, I've heard a little bit about how Eastport is being designed, and there will not be any street traffic as far as cars and golf carts and all that. It's supposed to be a walk-through kind of area. So you will not be able to park on the streets. It's going to be parking behind the buildings, and it's going to be much like a lifestyle walkthrough center, like some of the malls you get to. Now, I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's what I was told.
Yeah, I mean...
Which makes a good concept.
If they expand the concept of the Sawgrass food building, that probably would be a good idea. But Sawgrass doesn't have enough parking.
Right. They should have probably figured that out a little bit more. I see when everybody was parking out by the street on the grass area, they fixed that problem real quick. But they know how to fix things.
Well, it would have been far better to build a 2-story garage where you can stash 300 cars, and that would have solved the whole problem up front.
I do like Sawgrass a lot, though. I think the sound quality is good there because of the canopies, and well, of course, it's a newer setup, but I do like the sound quality there. I think it sounds really great.
Well, Eastport's going to have a very interesting town square. I haven't watched enough of Don Wiley's videos.
Yeah, Don Wiley does a good job. I mean, that's how I found out where to buy my lot. I looked on the village's map, and it's like, well, what's across the street from here? Well, I just watched his drone fly over, and they said, oh, I see, I got a pond across the street. I'll take that lot. So he does them a really good justice to doing that. And then he also throws people under the bus that are driving through some of the areas they're not supposed to be, which I like that too.
Yeah, well, Don is a county commissioner now, and he was actually my first guest on the show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we did 3 episodes with him. We did another one when he was doing the election for commissioner, and he's got to do another election this year, so I guess I'm going to bring him back for another episode. Before we go, Joe, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners, how they get a hold of you, or how would they find out more about your club?
They could go to the villagescraftbeer.com or www.thevillagescraftbeer.com. There's a join us link there. So if you click the join us link, you will get put on our wait list currently. We're going to start sending out a poll to see if our membership wants to increase or leave alone. I don't make that call. That's not for me to decide. And we'll get emails of that. And you can watch on our website what we do. We have a Facebook page called The Villages Craft Beer and Brewing Enthusiasts. That's how you can get a hold of us. And then we'll send you an email that you actually contacted us, and you can put on our wait list or ask information. We're currently setting up a sponsors page. So we have a lot of people that in the craft beer industry that want to start being in front of 400 people. So we picked up the Sunny Pint here in the Villages as a sponsor. Pat's Taps over in Lake Panisofsky. We got Tri-Eagle distributors that are the distributor in the villages are coming on board now. They really treat us really well, and a few others will bring on board. So it's neat to get other people involved. It allows us to do more things.
So is your club listed in the Recreation Center News?
Yes, it is. So you can find us that way. We meet the fourth Thursday of every month, but you have to be checked in and registered on the website in order to attend. So please cannot take guests in currently because we pack the room at 180 people. That's our max to keep it comfortable. Well, we don't want to be set. Our meetings are about being social, and it's not sitting in rows and teaching and then getting up and leaving. We sit around round tables. People bring snacks. They bring everything else because what it is everybody comes around the enjoyment of beer, and that's what makes everybody happy.
Great. Joe, thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, and major supporter Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2024, all rights reserved.